Nearly a year before Rosa Parks took her historic stand by staying seated, a 15-year-old black girl had also refused to yield her seat on a crowded Montgomery, Alabama city bus, citing the 14th Amendment even as she was arrested. Claudette Colvin was charged with 2 counts of breaking the city's segregation laws and 1 count of assaulting an officer, charges that have yet to be fully expunged. But this week, after more than 66 years, Colvin and her legal team filed to do just that, and they have the blessings of the county prosecutor. We were supposed to have Ms. Colvin on the show tonight, but at the last minute she had to cancel because she was not feeling well. But with me now is Phillip Ensler, her lawyer, her attorney for Claudette Colvin. Attorney Ensler, we thank you for your time and for taking this case. We hope Mrs. Colvin will be able to join us at another time. But to familiarize our audience with who may not know her name, she's essentially been on probation for that act of protest for about as long as I've been alive. Much of it spent here in New York, where she moved after her 1955 arrest, always fearing arrest if she returned to Alabama and to her family. Now, I understand, and as I was refamiliarizing myself with her story, I'm moved by this week's news because it sounds like at least one of her main motivations for this, in addition to justice, of course, is family. I mean, do I have this right?
Yes, Reverend Al, you do, and thank you so much for having me on, and thank you so much for sharing her story. She really is a pioneer of the movement, and this is long overdue credit for her and making sure that she gets the justice that she deserves. But yeah, she has lived ever since 1955 thinking that she's been on probation. The court put her on what they called indefinite probation, and understandably, her and her family took that very literally to mean that until told otherwise, that she is on probation. And she has said this is very much about letting her kids and her grandkids know that justice has finally been achieved. And also for younger people today, all of the activists out there, especially young women and young people that are fighting, that she hopes this gives them some inspiration to know that things are difficult, that it does take time, but if you keep fighting, that justice ultimately can prevail.
Now, counsel, I'm certainly no stranger to the pretext often used today to arrest activists of color. I've been arrested many times fighting for justice, and for that matter, but here you are. You had a 15-year-old girl in 1955 Montgomery charged with breaking Jim Crow laws and assaulting an officer. Now, I won't ask you about Jim Crow, but assaulting an officer, based on your research, how much or little did that mean at the time?
Right, so it could have been as simple as when they took her off the bus and put her in handcuffs. I mean, if her finger happened to touch the uniform of an officer, they could have called that assault. And you know, to have this hung over her this whole time for something that she was just trying to do the right thing, you know, that charge is absurd, and it's long overdue that the court expunge it and finally clear her name and clear her record of that.
Now, Attorney Ensler, as I mentioned at the top, the county prosecutor is on record in favor of full expungement for your client. Does that make it a done deal? Where do things stand?
So as you know, until the judge grants it, it's never a done deal, but we are very optimistic having the local district attorney be supportive as well as Mayor Reed here, who's been instrumental in it, and other community activists. That makes us very hopeful, and we're hoping to hear any day from the judge that he'll grant the motion and expunge her record.
And we certainly think that is due. I have a book coming out in a little while called Righteous Troublemakers. And I wrote about Ms. Colvin even before I knew she was going to come forward with this, because there are so many people who have not become household names, but that paved the way for the civil rights movement, where many that are more known we know, but we need to know the people like Claudette Colvin. And I write about her, I write about others that fought and never got limelight, never became famous, but stood up, and she stood up 9 months, I believe it was 9 months before Rosa Parks. And I think her story, among others, all the way through to now, ought to be told. And I'm trying to tell that while I have platforms to do it. Attorney Phillip Ensler, thank you very much for being with us. Our best to Ms. Colvin. We certainly will be having her on when she's up to it. Up next, my final thoughts. Stay with us.